Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world. And so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. And you need to go and spoil yourself, because I always believe that we ought to spoil ourselves. Life is precious. So go and get yourself that effervescent sparkling drink or something, because you deserve it. And if it's something rather unusual that you enjoy drinking or even eating, let me know about it, because I do love hearing from you. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, me and my brother Buddy ponderously stumble back into the farmhouse with weary, fatigued legs, our boots covered in thick mud, our soiled clothes completely filthy, our hearts thundering violently in our chests. None of us say a word. We're completely silent. Even in our home, the silence is deafening, but neither one of us speaks. Our tongues are tied to the roof of our mouths with invisible cords. Our voice boxes appear to be locked. The desire to speak is expunged from us, for words are not solicitously forthcoming, as we care not to indulge in the luxury of conversation, that at this moment in time holds absolutely no allure for us, as sometimes speaking or even articulating your thoughts can be onerously challenging. I carelessly throw down my rifle on the oakwood kitchen table, with a disinterested nonchalance. My brother does exactly the same, by example. We clumsily, cloddishly clamber into the farmhouse, like two wary, battle-worn Civil War soldiers returning from the Battle of Gettysburg or something, that have just about had enough of everything and desperately want life to return to normal. My big fat Labrador Juniper is clownishly jumping up and down on me, but when she smells my camouflage clothes, she skulks away, whimpers and retreats into the shadows of the kitchen. Can she smell the creature, I wonder? Dogs have a prominent, bodacious sense of smell. I do know that. Juniper has never behaved as incongruously as this before. She looks at me gingerly from behind the kitchen chair, almost appearing afraid of me. Normally she's jumping up and down me, like an excitable puppy that doesn't stop. I feel so much subjugated, repressed anger gushing through me, like an assertive, vigorous stream, dynamically charging over the sculptural rocks with an exuberant, audacious eagerness to join the main river. I don't remember the last time I was this piqued. I try to think when I was this outraged before in my life. My mind sifts through my memory bank like a filing system in an office, and then it rests upon the day my parents died. Now that was a day where I was resentful, annoyed, impassioned. I was so furiously angry that day. I personally could have killed that stupid imbecile Ed Taylor myself by wringing his scrawly neck with my own bare hands. Ed has about as much brain power as one of his annoying roosters that wakes me up every morning with its loud cock-a-doodle-doos. These days when I see him in town, he gives me a brief nod. I can still feel the taste of bile rising up in the back of my throat. I still hold him accountable for my parents' demise, even though deep down in my guts, I know the truth. I vividly recall my parents visiting both Ed and his wife, who live in the farmhouse next to ours. They'd been trying their hand at making moonshine. Well, at least Ed had been. My mother was best friends with Ursula, who is Ed's wife. Ed had invited both my parents over to his place to enjoy some of his experimental moonshine. So off they went. I think my parents thought they'd been invited to dinner, but that was an oversight or misunderstanding on their parts, as Ed had just invited them over to sample his moonshine. So to make matters worse, my parents drank the shots of moonshine on empty stomachs. When they returned home to me and Buddy later that evening, they were completely bladdered. At first they floundered and tottered as they stumbled through the house on very unsteady legs that seemed unable to support them. Their bleary eyes were rolling back in their sockets. I remember thinking it was terribly funny. So did Buddy. We couldn't stop laughing. I had never seen my parents this intoxicated before. Not as wasted as this. They were completely half-cut. So much so we had to help them back into their bedrooms and guide them into their beds. I had to pull back the duvet and the sheets. I remember removing my father's boots from his feet and my mother's shoes from hers, but I left them to their own devices, allowing them to sleep in their clothes, under the large, comfy feather duvet. Both my parents were groaning and chuckling, muttering strange things you do when you're drunk. My mother was talking about buying Juniper a pair of shoes. Hello, Juniper's a dog. I remember she was going on and on about it. Juniper needs some shoes. Juniper, he needs some shoes. You must get him some shoes. So my mother really was acting like a fruitcake, as if she'd completely lost her marbles. But we all know drink can screw with your mind. Mum, Juniper's a dog. Dogs don't wear shoes. Lethal stuff, said my father. Lethal stuff, but very good, he says, smacking his lips. That is what they say it is. My mother chuckles. Best moonshine in the world. Best moonshine. She flops down on the bed, sinking back into the soft duvet cover with an audible sigh. This is so nice, she says. So nice. Little did I know how lethal that pungent cocktail of moonshine actually was. It was far stronger, more alcoholically potent than it should have been. The trouble was my parents had drunk way too much, were heedlessly unaware of just how much they'd put away. I was to learn later that good old Ed had witlessly allowed them to engage in a ridiculous bird-brained competition. Well, not to put too fine a point on it, he hadn't actively discouraged them from abandoning this drinking competition, like he should have done, as any responsible adult would have. He sat there smoking his pipe, blindly impervious of the perilous dangers he had exposed both my parents to, by allowing them to down several shots of moonshine, which is very strong stuff. It only takes a tiny amount of the stuff to get drunk. On reflection and regretful hindsight, I do recall my parents shallow breathing that night. Their skin was slightly tinged with blue. Their bodies were very cold, so I had covered them up with extra blankets. Are Mum and Dad going to be all right? Buddy had asked me, looking rather bewildered. They're behaving very strangely. Shouldn't we call out a doctor? Of course not, I said ignorantly. But the next day when we tried to wake our parents up, we couldn't. They were dead. I remember shaking their bodies and screaming, Wake the hell up, Mum! Wake up, Mum! Wake up! But she lay there like a dead fish, with her eyes glazed over. I was livid. I knew that old Ed and his goddamn moonshine was responsible for their fortuitous demise. The coroner informed us that both my parents had died of alcoholic poisoning, which they told us kills 6 people per day around the world, possibly much more, as they don't know the exact numbers. She asked me if my parents had experienced any seizures or vomiting that night. I told her they had not, but it seemed that they had experienced all the other symptoms, so typical of alcohol poisoning, that I regret to say were unbeknown to me, like low body temperature, blue skin, confusion, shallow breathing. But how was I to know that they'd been poisoned? If I had known, I would have called an ambulance forthwith. I thought they were nursing a grievous hangover, that was all. I had absolutely no idea how much moonshine that bloody fool had allowed them to drink. Ed Taylor is not the sharpest brick in the block, by any manner of means. I will admit that I never knew anyone could be this cretinously stupid. Of course old Ed never got into trouble for my parents' demise. That wasn't bloody fair. I was pissed. The sheriff told me to calm down. Was he for real? My parents had just died, for goodness sake. He expected me to remain calm. I could feel the indignation rising up in my belly. The sheriff holds my shoulders down with one hand. He waggles a warning finger at me and looks at me sternly. I don't want you getting into bother with the law, Reuben. You know what you're like. You're impetuously impulsive. You're always landing yourself into a heap of trouble. What about when you and Buddy were caught poaching old MacDougall's turkeys for a silly dare, when you had plenty of turkeys on your own land to hunt? You were very lucky he dropped the charges. Your mother managed to persuade him to do so. I know you want to have it out with old Ed, but you can't take the law into your own hands. That is not acceptable. Ed never intentionally killed your parents. They simply drank too much moonshine.
They got alcoholic poisoning and died. It happens, Reuben. He bloody killed my parents, Sheriff, with his lethal moonshine. You think I should do nothing? I think he made it extra strong. Old Ed didn't know how lethal the moonshine was, Reuben. He meant well by your parents. Your parents have to take some accountability for this tragic episode, as hard as that may sound. Old Ed may have been encouraging them to drink, but they didn't say no, did they? He didn't force them to drink the moonshine. Yes, Sheriff, but he didn't discourage them either, did he? You don't know that, Reuben. You weren't there. He may have told them they were overindulging. Your parents should have known better, Reuben. They should have known when enough is enough. We have to take responsibility for our own health. If I choose to smoke, I know the risks to my health. I'm the one putting the cigarette in my mouth, am I not? No one is forcing me to smoke, are they? It's the same with alcohol of any kind. We should be able to draw a line and say, I've had enough. Besides, the moment you taste that moonshine, you can taste it's a hell of a strong. You should be able to tell at once. You're saying my parents should have known how lethal the moonshine was? They weren't the ones that made it. Look, Reuben, I know you're furious, and understandably so, but you're looking for someone to blame. Granted, it is very tragic your parents are deceased, but you are man of the house now. It's your responsibility to take care of Buddy. He's your younger brother. He's got learning difficulties. He requires sagacious guidance. He needs to follow by your example. So you need to be a positive influence and role model in his life. Your parents would expect that of you. You must stop laying the blame at other people's doors. Accidents happen in our world. People make dreadful mistakes. I see it all the time in my line of work. I should know. The drug addict who went too far with the overdose. The pedestrian crossing the road at the wrong time. The motorcyclist that gets flung off his bike. The cyclist that gets run over by a bus. And now your parents overindulging on moonshine. It happens. We need to move on with our lives. Living with the what if this and what if that never helped anyone, did it? It's counterproductive, exceedingly irrational. Despite the sheriff's warning, I had literally gone over to Ed's house, shouting the odds. Luckily for him, his wife Ursula was there. She calmed me down, mollified me with some of her chocolate chip cookies and warm milk. Ursula makes the best chocolate chip cookies this side of Tennessee. She has soothed many a fractured heart with her secret recipe, which she refuses to share with a living soul. Even the bakery in town begged her once to reveal her family secret, but she refused to budge on it. I believe when she goes down to the grave, the secret recipe will die with her. More the shame, that's all I can say. Now, Reuben, I can see you're angry with my husband, Ed, but none of this is his fault, she says, biting into a chocolate chip cookie and eyeing me studiously through her astute blue eyes. I perceive she's guessed rightly that I'm blaming her husband. Your parents were betting each other who could drink the most shots of moonshine. Your mother was saying she could hold her alcohol better than your dad, and he said, "You want a bet?" Your parents were so competitive in everything. They always were. You know that. They got carried away, taking it in turns to down shots of the moonshine. I was there. I saw the nonsensical thing that they were doing. I absolutely knew that this was not going to end well. I kept telling them to stop, but my words were like water off a duck's back. They simply refused to listen to me. The stubbornness they exhibited was admirable, if not just devastating. I mean, 2 shots of that moonshine, and you get seriously drunk. And God only knows how much your parents drank. The moonshine is strong stuff. I can only apologise that I never called an ambulance at once. But truly it never occurred to me that they were poisoned. I thought they'd have a slamming headache and a hell of a hangover the following morning, and be sleeping off their indulgences the next day. But dying? No, I never imagined that. Your mother, Reuben, she was my very best friend. I loved her to death. Sorry, that wasn't exactly the most appropriate thing to say, was it? But I loved your mother. I really did. I'm sorry, Reuben, said Ed. I did tell your parents they'd had too much to drink. I warned them the moonshine could knock them out after 2 or 3 shots. But they weren't listening to me, nor were they listening to Ursula. They were determined to compete against each other in this preposterous endeavour. It was madness, complete madness. I can only apologise I never saw this coming. But please, please accept my apologies. I do feel responsible for their death. I should have put my foot down and said you've had enough. But they were squealing with laughter, having so much ebullient fun. I didn't want to be a party pooper. In hindsight, I see I was a bloody idiot. I take a bite of the delicious chocolate chip cookie and gulp the warm milk. My anger becomes suppressed. The sweet buttery taste of the cookie seems to subdue my rage. It fades like a dying flower in the meadow. Suddenly my tumultuous, stormy mood becomes tranquilized. I recognize that the sheriff was right. There isn't really anyone to blame for this fortuitous tragedy. If the truth be told, I should have comprehended something was wrong when I noticed how cold my parents were, how blue their faces appeared. But I just thought those were the side effects of a seriously strong hangover, and I thought if you really were that sick, you'd vomit up all that alcohol. But it seems I was wrong. I'm an easygoing, insouciant, mellow southerner. In truth, it takes a lot to get me going, or to even ruffle my feathers. But the same aggrieved annoyance I felt on the day of my parents' passing has returned today with a vengeance. I'm still undertaking to review what transpired back in the woodgrove. My hands are physically shaking as I try to make sense of everything. I'm vexed. This is my land. It's been in our family for generations. How dare anyone try to claim ownership over this land? It's not going to happen over my dead body, as far as I'm concerned. I'll stop at nothing to defend and protect what rightfully belongs to me. I reflect over the morning's events, surreptitiously in my mind, meditating over everything quietly that transpired. Everything is deathly quiet in our home, so much so you could hear a pin drop if you wanted to, although I can hear the grandfather clock audibly chiming the hour, but it never depicts the correct time these days, even when you reset it. It happened after my parents died. I've never been able to fix it. Even Buddy is staring into space, as if locked under the influences of a trance. I guess that's what shock does to you. It kind of knocks the stuffing out of your sails. It takes a while for your mind to accommodate and adjust to what happened. I'm struggling with the sense that this was an illusory, eccentric, psychedelic dream. But Buddy and I have never indulged in magic mushrooms or stuff like that. It's so surreal to me. Buddy and I were going to hunt for wild turkey this morning. The sizable oak and hickory woods generously fringe the rear of our property, where we have spotted many wild turkey loitering around the woods. One that was so large that I've been trying to take it down over the last 3 years, but it always eludes me. The turkey is astute. One day I can promise you this, I will kill that turkey. We will eat it for Thanksgiving dinner, but there will be a ton of leftovers, of that I can assure you. I'm very fortunate that this land of ours has been in my family's possession for several generations. Ostensibly nowadays a family making a mediocre living such as the likes of me and Buddy could never afford to own such a sizable piece of land. But thanks to generations of our family, it has remained in our private possession. Suffice to say, like many proud private landowners in our part of the world, we're not selling, that's for sure. Not that we have been short of offers, of course. Buddy and I have a vegetable garden in our backyard, where we grow all our food very successfully, I might add. If you've ever tasted a homegrown tomato, it's a world apart from anything you can buy from a store. Me and Buddy regularly hunt and fish, so in many regards we are self-sufficient. I also raise honeybees and sell the bottled and labelled produce at the farmer's market. I find it an excellent way to procure an extra income. I also cut and sell firewood, and am a good handyman of sorts. Our old symmetrical farmhouse, with its white walls, grey slate roof, and large French windows, has stood here nestled on this land for a very long time, having been owned by generations of my family. I've kept up the general maintenance of the farmhouse. I'm good with my hands like that. I've attended to jobs like the leaking roof, the broken kitchen cupboards, light fittings that have gone awry, leaking taps, damaged shower heads, and the list goes on. The house is, let's just say, hankering for a woman's touch. But me and Buddy, although we're in our late 20s, have never been lucky in love. Most of the girls we meet think we're the kind of bachelors far too set in our ways to ever change. We're often told by women that we're not the marrying kind. It's probably true. I can't actually see myself being henpecked by a woman telling me to put my clothes away. Most of the curtains in our home are threadbare. One day I'll get around to replacing them. In the good old days, my mother used to wash them regularly with an organic lavender washing powder, so the house smelt amazing of lavender soap. Baked goodies as well, like cakes, muffins and homemade breads. My mother was a phenomenal baker. Not as brilliant as Ursula next door, of course, who is a legend in her own right. But regardless, she was an excellent cook. And let's just say she made the most delicious cinnamon bread that used to fill the house with a sensational aroma of cinnamon, butter and caramelized sugar. There was no smell quite like it. These days our house doesn't smell like that. It's a higgledy-piggledy mess, as me and Buddy are outdoorsy types, so we do the bare minimum of housework. So you could say our home is well lived in, with many jumbled, disarrayed clothes strewn over the sofas, books, newspapers and magazines lying flung across tables. Then things like torches and packets of seeds, plant food and the odd small trowel that should be put away neatly in a cupboard has become the ornamental fixtures and fittings on surfaces. So instead of finding a vase of flowers on a coffee table, you'll find a toolbox piled high with nails and screws. You get the general idea. Me and Buddy are not desperately organised, but we do keep the kitchen fastidiously clean, as a matter of routine, along with our bathrooms, although, of course, if you were to see them, you would say they were very outdated in both style and design. Our green kitchen, with its checked green curtains, is fitted with old-fashioned tiles, reminiscent of the 80s period. They're cream tiles alternating with the occasional cream tile decorated with a basket of fruit on it, while our 50s-style green-coloured cabinets that are now considered vintage, I have been told, have come back into fashion. My mother would be exceedingly pleased about the cleanliness of our kitchen, but if she saw the state of the living room, let's just say she'd be turning in her grave with shame. You're probably wondering why my blood is boiling, why I'm so incensed. I told you that the land to the rear of my property is heavily fringed by a sprawling hickory oak forest, which is comprised of mature, resplendent, towering trees, a diverse mixture of oaks, from red oak, white oak, black oak, bur oak. We also have a collection of hickory trees, some black walnut, sugar maples, white pine, black cherries and flowering dogwoods, blueberries and mountain laurels. I pride myself in owning this precious piece of land, but today I've been challenged by a Bigfoot. Can you believe that? I can't believe the brazen audacity of what happened this morning. I'm still going over the event in my mind, like reviewing a video clip again and again, as if I just can't believe it's true. I can't fathom what actually happened. There is a large part of me that believes it was all a fictitious fairy tale, but it most certainly was not. To say that I'm filled with rage is literally an understatement. It all began when me and my brother got up early this morning. I wanted to take down a medium-sized turkey. I'm particularly fond of the white meat. My mother used to tell me I liked turkey because it's full of tryptophan, an amino acid that can cross the blood-brain barrier. I believe it's responsible for increasing the feel-good hormones like serotonin and melatonin in the brain. I think there is truth to this, as every time I eat turkey, I sleep like a baby, feel absolutely amazing, and always in a good mood. Suffice to say, me and Buddy decided to rise early for our turkey hunt, to sneak stealthily into the forest under the guise of darkness. Many of the turkeys make their nests under the trees in the woods. They particularly love hickory and oak forests. When they get up early for breakfast to look for food, providing your blind is in a good spot, you can take down a turkey relatively easily. Needless to say, they are very clever birds, so you have to learn to outsmart them. When I say Buddy and I got up early, that is our quintessential secret to success when it comes to hunting turkey. Well, that's our secret anyway. Of course, getting Buddy out of bed early in the morning is not a job for the faint-hearted. I literally have to roll him off the bed, and I'm not joking either. Naturally, he throws a crescendo of abuse at me. "Why did you do that? I'm sleeping. Can't you see I'm sleeping?" I will say to him, Remember, Buddy, we're going turkey hunting this morning. For a while he would protest and groan. I don't want to go hunting. I want to go back to sleep. I'm tired, he'll complain. Eventually I managed to persuade him to get dressed in his camouflage gear, which he does with a bashful diffidence and a reluctance. But once we leave the house, we both become galvanised by a voracious exuberance. I don't know what it is about getting up before the sun sets, but it's exhilarating, it's venturesome, especially when a cool wind is blowing against your face, as the cobwebs of sleep that may still be clinging to you are finally blown away. It was tenebrously dark still as we ventured surreptitiously outside, taking care to be as quiet as possible, which is not always easy when you're furtively walking through an oak and hickory forest, as there's a plethora of fallen leaves, acorns, twigs, bark, all kinds of forest mulch and debris, which can easily betray your presence all too eagerly. It would seem every rustle, snap and crack of a twig can alert wildlife, including human body odour, which is why we always use an odour repellent. The silvery shafts of moonlight are not magnanimous tonight, nor are the stars. They seem grudgingly obscured by a hazy fog that appears to be trailing above the towering trees in smoking ribbons, like a blanket or veil, wantonly blocking out the light. Luckily the light from our headlamps is more than sufficient enough for us, so we're not intimidated or daunted by the sparing illiberal light. Buddy and I are exceedingly well acquainted with the woods, very familiar with the land. We know the layout superbly well. We played cowboys and Indians, and cops and robbers in here as boys. We know this place like the back of our hands. We comprehend where the ideal location is to set up our hunting blind. As we enter the woods we hear the crickets chirping, the frogs croaking, and with the stealth and cunning of a wildcat, we clandestinely slip into the woods, with the sly artfulness of a robber. Sometimes our John Cowden hunting boots make a crunching noise, but we do try our level best to be sub-rosa discreet. Finally we reach the area where we put up our blind, with an efficient stealth of note. We covertly, rather proficiently, and desperticularly, take cover. We are patiently at the ready with our rifles in position. It's a waiting game now. We sit there under the canopy of the towering trees in a hushed silence. In a trice the sounds of the crickets and frogs disappear, as they retire for the night, and now taking authority over this musical ambience is a pretty orchestra of chirruping birds, now so illustriously employed. Finally the transcendent sunrise unfolds over the valley, like a rose opening her petals. A sea of undulating tangerine orange waves dance through the boughs of the trees. Everything is now dappled with a glorious golden glaze. Before long the morning has been fully birthed. We hear the dawdling turkeys leaving their nests, pecking the ground hungrily, searching for breakfast. I'm about to shoot at a sizable turkey. Then there's a firm hand on my shoulders, squeezing it, trying to restrain me from shooting. "Buddy," I whisper, shaking his hand off me in annoyance. "What the hell are you doing? Can't you see I'm trying to shoot that gobbler?" Buddy doesn't shift his hand. It remains firmly on my shoulders. I'm now very annoyed. I turn around to look directly at him, with an aggrieved expression upon my face. "What the hell?" Now I'm very annoyed, and I'm about to protest, but standing there is not Buddy, but a huge Bigfoot. I'm so stumped that he actually has his hand on my shoulder. The creature is so scary to look at. I mean, it's easily 8 foot tall, 700 pounds. Let's not kid. He's humongous. He's covered with dark flowing hair that is so black I could swear it's almost navy blue. I tremble with terror, but his human-like face is benevolent, but his brown eyes seem determined. I suddenly hear the words in my head. "Would you kindly refrain from killing any of my birds? Would you please leave my forest?" I freeze. I study the creature in astonishment. Did I really hear him say that? Was he speaking in my mind? "Would you kindly refrain from killing my birds? Will you leave my forest? Is that what he said to me? And if he did, it was a bloody cheek." Buddy blurts out, "He wants us to leave, bro, not to shoot any of his turkeys. He says this is his wood grove." Buddy is looking at me with wide, earnest eyes. His knees are physically shaking. I can see that he's rather intimidated by the creature. I'm so stumped by this revelation that I'm at a loss for words. What really niggles me is I can't stand up against this creature. How can I possibly even challenge him? I mean, he's Herculean in size. If I fight my corner and tell him that this forest has been in our family for generations, all he has to do is use a fist on me, and I'll be lifting up the daisies in the ground. This isn't even a fair battle by any manner of means. I'll escort you out of my forest, the Bigfoot says to me in my head. Would you kindly leave, he says again. The next thing I know is that me and Buddy gather our things together, the blind and our backpack. The Bigfoot even hands me my rifle back. Can you believe it? He bloody hands me my rifle back. I could potentially shoot him with this rifle, but he's not concerned about that possibility at all. I'll tell you what I feel like. I feel like a mischievous pupil at school being expelled and shamefully evicted from the premises. This is my land, for goodness sake. What a bloody cheek. The more I think about the incident, the angrier and angrier I feel. After me and Buddy sit down in our living room, having not spoken for ages, it's not every day you meet a Bigfoot, and let's just say when you do, your life is never going to be the same again. I liked him, says Buddy. I mean the Bigfoot. You were shitting yourself, bro, I say. You were scared as hell. How in God's name can you say you liked him? That's ridiculous. I could see he was nice, bro. You can see he's got a genuine-looking face. I liked his eyes. They were very kind, not shifty. For God's sake, Buddy, listen to yourself, bro. You sound like one of those silly teenage girls, oohing and ahhing over a celebrity. They've got the hots for or something. Oh, he's got a nice face, bro. Kind eyes, bro. Are you bloody kidding, bro? What the heck are you smoking, Buddy? Nice? Of course that Bigfoot isn't nice. Did you not hear what he said to us? Buddy pauses for a moment. Yes, he told us that we must not kill his birds, and we must leave his wood grove. Exactly, bro. You have the audacity to say that the Bigfoot was nice? Did you not see that he was more or less telling us we were trespassing on his land? His land? It's our land. What a bloody cheek, I say, hammering my fist into a loaf of bread on the sideboard, until I've made it as flat as a pancake, while Buddy watches me with raised eyebrows. Maybe we are trespassing on his land, Buddy says. Now I'm angry with my brother, very indignant. I want to smack him over the face so hard. But I remind myself that he has learning difficulties, so I restrain myself from lashing out. But his comments rarely rile me up, and serve to make the molten lava of the volcano inside of me on the precipice of erupting. How can you bloody say that, Buddy? This land is ours. It's been in our family for generations. I'll not be told by a bloody Bigfoot to get off my own property. Do you understand that? I'm going to call for reinforcements. I'm going to kill that Bigfoot if it's the last thing I do. Please don't, bro, says Buddy. I don't want you to kill him. You can see he's very nice. Nice, Buddy? What the hell is wrong with you? Have you got a pea for a brain? The Bigfoot was not nice. Later that evening, several of my friends arrive at my home. As I have called for reinforcements, I want my friends to help me eliminate this Bigfoot. I hear motorbikes drawing up my dirt drive. My friends are now gathered around me on the patio with beers in their hands. If you were to look at my friends, you would describe them as rednecks. They wear plaid shirts, bandanas, cowboy boots, and a laid-back casual appearance where they sport beards and moustaches, I suppose. What's going on? Asked Devon. You said we needed to get here urgently, to bring our rifles with us. What's this about? We've got a big problem, I say. A big problem. And when I say big, I mean Titanic. What's wrong? With Buddy, says Devon suddenly. Why does he look so distressed? Buddy is being completely ridiculous, I say. Take no notice of him. He's just sulking. That's not like Buddy to sulk, says Devon. Buddy, are you all right? No, I'm not all right. I'm not happy about any of this. What's going on here? Says Nick, taking a sip of his beer and eyeing me warily. What kind of a problem are you having? A Bigfoot problem, I say. For a moment no one says a word. The silence on the patio is actually deafening. My friends have stopped drinking, but their eyes remain stoically fixed on me. Finally Dennis speaks out. He plays with his long black beard. A Bigfoot problem, you say? What the hell? It's a long story, I exclaimed to my friends. This morning me and Buddy went shooting for turkey in our wood grove. We got up at the crack of dawn. I was about to shoot a turkey. I got this close to shooting my target. Then I feel a hand on my shoulder, pressing me. I'm mad. I think Buddy is trying to physically stop me from shooting a turkey. But it's not Buddy who's holding my shoulder. It's a bloody Bigfoot. Can you believe it? You're bloody kidding me, says Devon, looking astonished. The Bigfoot was holding your shoulder down? You must have been shitting yourself. This has got to be the most terrifying thing that could ever happen to you. Well, let's just say he was more than a little intimidating, built like an army tank. But he had the blatant audacity and cheek to tell me to leave his birds alone, and his forest. Can you believe the bloody nerve of it? My family has owned this forest for generations. No one tells me to get off my land. But he bloody did. Then the creature has the audacity to escort me and Buddy out of the forest as if we're trespassers. Sorry, says Devon, furrowing his brow. I'm not quite understanding you. I'm not following you exactly. How could a Bigfoot speak to you? Are you saying he knew how to speak English? No, not exactly, I say, but the words were English that were spoken in my head. I think it's telepathic. I think that's what they call it. My brother's telling you the truth, said Buddy. He spoke to us in our heads. You knew it was him. The words had a voice that was different to our thoughts. Wow, that is incredible, said Garth. But you're right. It's a bloody cheek, if I ever heard anything like that before. Bloody cheek, the Bigfoot telling you to get off your own land. Who does he think he is? That's why I brought you around here. There are 8 of us and 1 of him. If we fire several rounds at the creature, we can take him down, we can kill him. Are you sure that is a good idea? I don't mean to put a spanner in the works, but what if there are other Bigfoots in the forest? These creatures, they may be unpredictable. Oh, don't worry about that, I say. I'm sure it's only him. Please, says Buddy. Please don't do this, bro. Why, Buddy? Why don't you want your brother to get rid of the Bigfoot? 'Cause he's nice. He's got kind eyes. Look, the Bigfoot told your brother to get out of the wood grove. He claims it as his territory. We have to put a stop to this now. That Bigfoot needs to be killed. Since when do animals boss humans around like this? But he's not an animal, protests Buddy. He's a human being with hair. Soon everyone was on board with taking down this Bigfoot, and all 8 of us, armed with our headlights and rifles, entered the woods. Luckily on this night we had a full moon, and a velvety black sky dappled by a plethora of pretty silvery stars. There was a cool wind blowing as we entered the wood grove. Of course, when you're looking for a Bigfoot, it's not like a normal hunt, but I did have a good feeling about where to go, so I led the group towards the outcrop of rocks. I know there was a cave that me and Buddy had frequented as a young boy. It had been lined with deer pelts. There had been a bed in there made of mosses. At the time I'd thought nothing of it. I thought it was probably a vagrant living in our woods. But this, I think, is where the Bigfoot lived. It was an enclosed space. The cave was relatively self-contained, like a small room. I told my friends to be quiet. Buddy was coming along minus his rifle. He was wearing a hangdog expression on his face. He looked desperately unhappy. Before long we were all clandestinely hiding behind various tree trunks, waiting for the Bigfoot to make his appearance. I could see Buddy moving his lips behind the tree. I asked him what the hell he was doing. I'm praying that you won't hurt the Bigfoot, he told me. I don't know how long we hid behind the trees, but it seemed like a long time. Actually, it was a beautiful sparkling night, with the wind whistling through the trees. The boughs of the trees were bobbing up and down, while golden leaves like celestial butterflies were blowing up in the wind. The light of the silvery moon danced through the trees, casting its faint shadows over the wood grove, creating a mystical, enchanting ambience. All of a sudden the crickets and frogs stopped serenading the night. Everything became inauspiciously quiet. So quiet, in fact, as even the wind was silenced into submission. It was then we could hear a whistle, heavy, ponderous feet thumping across the forest floor, with a booming sound, almost like a drum beating. I put my fingers on my lips, indicating my friends to get ready to shoot. I knew that the Bigfoot was on his way to that cave. Then we saw the Bigfoot, before our very eyes, as the moonlight that trickled through the trees lit up his whole shadowy silhouette. The Bigfoot is carrying a dead rabbit in his hands. He's walking in a vertical straight line to the cave. He looks almost as if he's gliding or floating on air. Buddy screams out to the Bigfoot, "Run! They're going to shoot you! Run!" But all 8 of us, with the exception of Buddy, quickly unload our bullets into the cave. But it didn't sound like we'd hit anything, and all our rifles had been pinned on the creature. I think he was now cornered in the cave, but now we would definitely get him. I was exceedingly annoyed with the betrayal of Buddy for shouting out a warning like that. Whose side was he on, for goodness sake? I was his brother. But I knew that no one could survive that many bullets. Surely 1 or 2 of them must have hit the creature. We cautiously approached the cave to finish the job off. But as we get to the cave, we see no sight or sound of the Bigfoot. When we enter the cave that is strewn with animal pelts, the Bigfoot is nowhere to be seen. We see a deer bolting out of the cave very suddenly, and discover the dead rabbit lying strewn over the floor. We all look around the cave for the signs of the Bigfoot, but he's nowhere to be found. When we fired our shots, the Bigfoot had dashed into the cave, but inside the cave, he was nowhere to be seen. We returned back to my farmhouse nonplussed, and after much deliberation, we come to the bizarre conclusion that the Bigfoot could have shapeshifted into the deer that had scurried away from the cave. I know that sounds incongruously bizarre, but we have no other explanation for how the creature that entered the cave vanished when there was no way outside that cave. Needless to say, Buddy was exceedingly thrilled that we hadn't succeeded in killing the Bigfoot. That night when I retired to bed, I had an extraordinary, very poignant dream. In my dream, the Bigfoot comes forward through the fog and says to me, "All right, I'll call a truce. You can use the woodgrove on the weekends only. The rest of the week, the woodgrove is mine." I never told anyone about that dream, but I believe it was a message from the Bigfoot, so I only ever go hunting in those woods over the weekends. And to date, I've never had problems with the big guy. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.